We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Beis in Maseches Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 31b. On the previous Amid, the Gemara brought a second version of a case where a woman was serving as a third party and she was holding on to a document, and she said that the document was already paid. And in the second version of the story, Rav Nachman did not believe the woman who said that this document was already paid. And so now Rava asks Rav Nachman, Kalse, if she wanted to, she could burn this document, and therefore she should be believed to say that it was already paid. As Rashi explains, Kalse sarfaso, again, she could burn it. Hilkach mala l'shaka, therefore why should she be lying? She must be telling the truth. And the Gemara answers to that, Kevan dis chazik bebeidina, since we're talking about a shtar which was already certified by the court, iboy kalse lo amrina, we don't say that she's believed because she could have burned it. You don't say that idea in a situation when you're dealing with a certified document. And Rashi explains, dis chazik bebeidina, shekasabo henpuk, there's a henpuk, which is the court writes a henpuk, a certification on the document, lo alima I lafku a maisa bezdin, she doesn't have the strength to undo a maisa bezdin, to undo an action of the court. And the Gemara continues, Eisvei Rava Rav Nachman, Rava asks Rav Nachman the following question, Simphon sheyesh olav edim, let's say you have a simphon, which is a receipt, and it's signed by witnesses. The receipt is saying that the debt has already been paid, Yeskayim b'chosmov, so then you're able to certify that by certifying the signatures. Ein olav edim, if there are no witnesses, v'yatza mitachas yidei shlish, but it's being held by a third party, o sheyatza achar chisam shtaris, or let's say it was written after the signature of the document, meaning on the document itself, you have the receipt written underneath the signatures that are on the document. In those cases, kosher, in those cases, whether it's a third party, whether it's yotze achar chisam shtaris, it is considered to be kosher. And the Gemara says, alma shlish mehemen, so don't we see from here that that third party is believed? Here you have a simphon, and the reason why we are relying on it is because it's being held by a third party. And the Gemara says, tiyufta de Rav Nachman, that is a refutation of Rav Nachman. Why are we relying on the third party? It must be we do say this idea that since the third party has the ability to do whatever he wants to with this particular document, he could burn it if he wanted to, so therefore he's believed with regards to the document as well. And Rashi explains, Simphon Shover, again it's a receipt, V'yotza mitachas yad lova kemishpatu, the borrower is the one that's holding the receipt, it's proving that he paid it off. Yeskayim hashtar b'chosmav, so you certify the signatures, Ya'idu edem al chasimas yudein v'kosher, they testify that this is in fact their signature, and it is kosher. Ein olav edem, now let's say the Simphon, this receipt does not have witnesses, V'areu yotze mitachas yad shlish, and a third party is holding it, V'lo mitachas yad halov, it's not being held by the borrower, Hoel ushneim modim shezem mineu lios shlish beinayim kosher, since they both admit that this person was appointed as a third party, it is considered to be kosher. O sheyatza achar chisum shtaris, or it's following the signature on the documents, meaning besoch shtar hamil v'nichtav hashover tachas o edim, it's written underneath the witness's signatures on the document itself, on the shtar milva itself, kosher, it is kosher. Shaharei hamalva atzmo muchzak b'shtaro, because the lender himself, he's holding his shtar, he had possession of the shtar, v'lav depart, if not for the fact that it was paid off, lo avish he wouldn't have allowed to write a receipt on it, and therefore we can assume that that is a kosher receipt. And the Gemara continues, Kiyasar Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan, when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, he said that Rabbi Yochanan said, Liolam Mevi Raya, the person can continue to always bring evidence, Visoser, and overturn the verdict, Ad Sheyistatem Tanosov, until his claims are all closed up, until he has nothing further to bring. V'yomer, and he says, Kirvu Ploni Uploni V'hayiduni, so-and-so should come, and they should testify on my behalf. And Rashi explains, Achi Yistatim Tanosov. Again, the first part of the statement of Rabbi Yochanan was he can always bring evidence until Yistatim Tanosov. Mashma Sha'amar Bebezin Ein Li Lo Edim V'Lo Raya. What that implies is that he says in court that I don't have any witnesses, I don't have any evidence. The Chazar V'Yamar, and then he says, Kirvu Ploni Uploni, he says, bring so-and-so, Shahayu Mizumonim Sham, which were ready, they were right over there. Umitchila Sosim Tanosov Lomar Ein Li. Originally he had said that I don't have anything, and now he says he does. And the Gemara now continues and asks, Hagufa Kash, it seems like the statement of Rabbi Yochanan is internally contradictory. Because Amrit Yistatim Tanosov, on the one hand you said that he can bring until Yistatim Tanosov. Asan l'Rabbanan, that sounds like what the Rabbanan are saying in the Mishnah. V'hadar Amrit, but then you say, Kirvu ish ploni uploni ve'iduni, that if he says so-and-so should come and they should testify for me, Asan l'Rav Shimon Gamliel, that sounds like you're paskening like Rav Shimon Gamliel. And Rashi explains, Hagufa Kash, it's internally contradictory, meaning Yistatim Yistatim Tanosov Mashma, when you say the phrase Yistatim Tanosov, that sounds like it's saying, Mikevon Sheyistamu Shuv Ein Mevi Raya, that once he closes off the possibility of bringing evidence, he can't bring further. V'afilu Mutzam Lachar Zman, even if he finds evidence later, K'Rabbanan, that sounds like the Rabbanan. Meaning to say the person said, I don't have evidence, and then later he says he does have evidence and he brings evidence. So it sounds like we're following the Rabbanan, that's no good. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel would say that is good. V'hadar Katani, but then it said, Kirvu, it says that if he says Kirvu, that was the very last case of the Mishnah where a person sees he's losing and then suddenly says, I have some witnesses. Demashma dahaihu delo maisi, that sounds like it's only in that situation of Kirvu that you're not allowed to bring the evidence. The Afilu Rav Shimon ben Gamliel modebo, that was the one scenario that even Rav Shimon ben Gamliel admits that you can't bring the evidence. Aval mitzam lachar zman maisi Reb Shimon, that would imply that in a normal case where you find evidence later on, you could bring that evidence like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. So the question really is, what exactly is Rabbi Yochanan paskening? Is he paskening like the Rabbanan, or is he paskening like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel? And the Gemara continues, now if you're going to say Kula Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, really it all is following Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Upurushe kamefarish, and really one line in his psak, in his ruling, is explaining the other. My adshi yistatim tanosov. What does it mean until he has exhausted all of his claims? Yomer kirvu ploni uploni v'haduni. It means that until he says, bring so and they should testify for me, meaning unless it's like the very last case of the Mishnah, otherwise we say he's allowed to bring further evidence, meaning we really are paskening like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. But the Gemara says, V'ha'amar Rabba bar bar Chana amar Rabbi Yochanan, but didn't Rabba bar bar Chana say that Rabbi Yochanan said, Kol makom sheshana Rav Shimon ben Gamliel b'mishnah seinu halacha kemoso. Anytime we find Rav Shimon ben Gamliel teaching something in our Mishnah, the halacha is like him. Chutz me Ariv Tzidan v'Raya Achrona, with the exception of Ariv Tzidan and Raya Achrona, and Raya Achrona is the last case of the Mishnah. It sounds like we don't paskin like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel in the last case of our Mishnah. And so the Gemara says, Ela kiyasar Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda amar Rav Yochanan. Rather, when Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda came, he said that Rav Yochanan said, Liola mevi raya v'soser. The real ruling of Rav Yochanan was as follows: the person can continuously bring evidence to overturn the verdict ad sheyistatim tanosam, until he has exhausted all of his claims. V'yomru lo, and they say to him, Have edim. If they say to him, bring witnesses, v'yomer, and he says, Ein li edim, I have no witnesses. This is like the last case of the Mishnah. Have raya, they say to him, bring evidence. V'yomer ein li raya, and he says, I don't have evidence. In those situations, once he says, I don't have witnesses, once he says, I don't have evidence, he can no longer bring, and that actually follows the Chachamim, meaning we paskin like the Chachamim. And the statement continues, Aval bo edim in Medina Sayyam, but if witnesses were to come from overseas, from far away, or let's say his father's saddlebag was deposited by someone else, the point is there was no way that he would have known about these witnesses or this evidence, then already hareza mevi raya v'soser, then already he can bring that as evidence and overturn the verdict. And the Gemara continues, Kiyasa Rav Dimi Yamar Rav Yochanan, when Rav Dimi came, he said that Rav Yochanan said, Hatokev es chaveru badin, if somebody is very strong against his friend in terms of judgment, Rashi explains, Hatokev es chaveru badin, baldin kashu matriach es chaveru. You have a difficult litigant, he's disturbing the other litigant, ve'ein rotza chaveru ladin kan, and therefore that other litigant, he doesn't want to have the case judged over here, elulamakom va talmidei chacham, he'd rather go to a place of an assembly of scholars, harbe, where there are many scholars. The point is, that way this person will be embarrassed from them. This is a tough individual, and it's better if he's taken to the Makom Havad. He's going to act more like a proper litigant in that situation. So again, Hatokev es chavero bedin echad omer nidon kan. So this person who's being tokef, he says, I want to be judged right here. Let's use the local bezdin. V'echad omer, but the other one says, Neilech l'makom havad. Let's go to the place of assembly. Let's go to the higher court. So kofano so v'yelech l'makom havad. We actually do force that other litigant, and we say that they go to the place of assembly. Amar lefanav Rabbi Elazar said before him, Rebbe, my Rebbe, Misha Nosha b'chaveiro mon, if somebody owes his friend 100 dinar, Yotzi mon al mon, and now he's going to have to spend 100 dinar just to go to the Makom Havad, just in order to get back a money, that doesn't make any sense. Elakofan oso v'dan beiro, on the contrary, rather we have to force the other person and say, no, you have to have the judgment in his city, it has to be done locally. And the Gemara continues, Itmar Nami Amar Rav Safra, was stated as well. Rav Safra says, Shnayim shenesatzmu bedin, if you have two people, Rashi explains, nesatzmu shenasu kashin zelazeh, again, they're being difficult to one another in terms of din, in terms of a court case. Echad omer nidon kan, one says we should judge over here, v'echad omer neilech l'makom havad, the other one says we should go to the place of assembly, kofen oso v'dan be'iro. So we force the person, and we say that the judgment should take place in his city, it should take place locally. V'im hutzrach davar lishol, and if there's something that the court needs to ask of the higher court, kosvin v'sholchen, so then they should write their question, and they should send their question to the higher court. V'imamar, and if the litigant says, Kisvu tanuli mezatam dantuni, if the litigant says, I want you to write down and give it to me an explanation of why you judged the way you judged me, kosvin v'nos and losa, then we do that, we write it for him, and we give it to him. And the Gemara continues, V'hayavama, when it comes to a Yavama, let's say she wants to get Chalitza from the Yavam, Holeches achar hayavam lahatira, she has to follow the Yavam in order to be permitted, meaning to say, in order to get the Chalitza, she has to go to his city. And the Gemara says, Ad kama, how far does she have to travel to get the Chalitza? Amar Rabbi Yami says, Afilu mi Tiveria l'Tzipori, even if she has to travel from Tiveria to Tzipori, she would have to go that far in order to get the Chalitza. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Kahana says, Mikro, where do we see this from the Pasuk? The Pasuk says, V'karu lo ziknei iro, it says the elders of his city will call, V'lo ziknei iro, it doesn't say the elders of her city, it says the elders of his city, so we see that the Chalitza is done in his city. And the Gemara continues, Amar Amemar says, Hilchasa kofen oso v'yelech l'makam havad, the halach is that we force the person to go to the place of assembly, meaning to the higher court if they're having a dispute, whether to use the local court or the higher court. Amar le Ravashi li Amemar, Ravashi said to Amemar, V'amar Rebbe Elazar, but didn't Rebbe Elazar say the opposite? Kofen oso v'dan be'ir, we force the litigant to do the judgment in his city, to have the case done by the local court. And the Gemara says it depends who's making the request. Hani mili heicha, zekamar le lova malva. That's talking about in a situation where the borrower is telling it to the lender, meaning if the borrower is demanding to go to a place that's far away, to the place of assembly, in that situation we don't listen, and we say it has to be done locally. Aval malva, but let's say it's the lender who's the one that's saying he wants to go far away to the higher court, so then the borrower does have to follow the lender, because the pasuk says, Eved lo v'li ishmalva, that the borrower is like a servant to the lender. And the Gemara continues, Shalchu leila Marukva, they sent Marukva the following message. Marukva was the head of the Jews in exile, and they sent the following message to him, L'dezivle, to the one who shines, Kevar Bitya, like the son of Bitya, meaning to the one who shines like Moshe Rabbeinu. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Shalom, they said there should be peace to you. Ukvan habavli kavel kadamana, Ukvan the Babylonian, he complained in front of us, Yirmiyah Achi, that Yirmiyah, my brother, Havir Olai Asaderech, he came past me, which is a way of saying he did evil upon me. We'll see Rashi in a moment. V'imrulo, and therefore you should instruct him, you should say to him that Yirmiyah has to make up for this. And Hisiyu v'yira ponenu b'Tiveria, and you should tell him that he is compelled to come before us to court in Tiveria. And the Gemara says, Hagufa Kasha, this message is internally contradictory. Amrit Imrulo, first it says, you should tell him what to do. Alma Dainu Atun, it sounds like the message is that you should be the judge. And then it says, Hisiyu v'yira ponenu b'Tiveria, that he should be forced to come before us in Tiveria. Alma Shadru Hacha, that sounds like it's saying, send him over here. And so the Gemara says, Ella rather Hachi Kamri, this is what the message was saying. Imrulei Dainu Atun, it means Imrulei means you should judge him. And Itzayis Tzayis, if he listens, then he listens. V'ilo, but if he doesn't, Hisiyu v'yira ponenu b'Tiveria, then you should compel him that he should come before us to Tiveria. Rav Ashi says, Dinei Knossos have. Actually, what was going on was, this was a matter that involved Knas, it involved fines. Ubebavel lo dainu Dinei Knossos, and in Bavel, again where Mar Ukva was, they really are not able to judge Dinei Knossos, they can't judge cases involving fines because they didn't have smicha in Bavel. And the reason why they sent him the message in that fashion, as if to imply that in theory he could have judged it, but it should be sent to Eretz Yisrael, that was just kadei lachlo kavod l'marukva, in order to give honor, to give respect to Marukva. And Rashi explains, L'dezivle kevar bitya, again the message was to the one who shines like Bar Bitya. Kimosha means he shines like Moshe Rabbeinu, Shu ben Bitya, he was the son of Bitya. L'misha makrin or panav k'Moshe Rabbeinu, your face shines like Moshe Rabbeinu, Shegidalto Bitya bas Paro, because Moshe Rabbeinu was of course raised by Bitya, the daughter of Paro. Lashon Achar, another way of understanding what this means is kevar beisei. It means kevar beisei, that's the one who lives in the house. Kimosha Shu ben Bayis, Moshe Rabbeinu was referred to as the Ben Bayis. T'chsiv, as it's written, B'chol Beisi Ne'eman, that he's trusted in my entire house, the house of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. L'dezivle al Shem Shayach Chacham. The reason why he was given this title in the message was because he was wise. Uchsiv Chachmas Adam Toyer Panav, and it says a person's face shines when he is wise. And Rashi says in Watzasi b'Sefer Haggadah, I found in a Sefer of Agadata, Shahaya Marukva Bal Teshuvah, that Marukva actually had done Teshuvah. Shenasan Einov B'isha Achas, because he set his eyes on a particular woman, V'hela Libo Tina V'nafal B'cholin, and became ill over this. this. Ve'eshes ish haisen, she was actually a married woman that he desired. Liyamim nitzrcha lelavos mimenu, sometime later she needed to borrow money from him. Umitoch dochka nisratzes lo, and because of the fact that she needed money, so she actually accepted to be with him. However, v'chavash yitzro, but nevertheless he conquered his yetzer hara, upatra l'shalom, and he let her go in peace, v'nisrapi, and then he was healed. Uchshaya yotze l'shuk, and when he went out to the marketplace, hayaner dolek baroshu min hashamayim, there was a candle that was lit over his head from the heavens. V'al shem kach kari le Rabbi Nosson tzutzisa b'Masechah Shabbos. That's why Rabbi Nosson refers to him as tzutzisa in Masechah Shabbos. Hachanami l'hachi kasvule. Here also, that's why they write it in that fashion. Hachi al shem ha'or shayazoreach olav. They write this about him because of the light that was shining from him. Ukvan habavli kavel kadamana. And again, the message was that Ukvan habavli is complaining to us. Tzoak lefanenu. He's complaining to us. V'amar Yirmiyah achi hever alayis haderech. And he's complaining that Yirmiyah, my brother, he passed by me on the road, again, which is a way of saying he did bad to me. Ibed mi many derech b'nei adam. Now, the first interpretation is he's caused me to lose the way of people. Shasir so kach shamati, that he castrated him. That says Rashi, that's what I heard is the explanation. V'yesh omer, but others say the explanation is Havir alayas haderech lo noag imi kashura. It just means he didn't act properly with me. Ve'aliske mamon hayatzoik, he was complaining in some monetary issue. Amru lo leYirmiyah lehispayis imo. So he said, Imru lo, tell Yirmiyah that he has to make up for what he did. And then the message was, Hisiyu v'yira panenu b'Tiveria. You have to compel him to come to Tiveria. Hechrichu v'izkiku lavo kan. Force him to come here, ladonimo, in order to have a court case. And then the explanation of the Gemara later was Dinei Knossos, the case involved fines. Elohim ksiv bahen, because it says Elohim by fines. That means to say you need smicha. Ubein on smuchin, you need to have judges who have smicha. Ubebavel ain't smicha kedamrinu in parakam. In Bavel there was no smicha, like it says in the first parak. Hadron Allah Zebora, we will return to you, parak Zebora. This is the end of the third parak of Masechah Sanhedrin. If you're enjoying these videos and this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. And take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. And we will begin the next video on Daf Lamed Beis Amar Aleph, the fourth parak of Masechah Sanhedrin.